I guess this means no seat at the table, my dad said with a crooked grin, watching as I folded the house deed and slipped it into my purse. Then he added, louder this time, if you'd rather live in trash than help your sister find peace at her retreat, then go, live like trash. My sister didn't look up. She sipped her iced tea, legs crossed, as if I'd just handed her a bill instead of a boundary. My mom offered nothing but silence. That kind of silence that punches louder than words. That kind that confirms they'd all decided long before today. My name is Reagan Ellis. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been told you don't belong by the very people who raised you? I'd bought the house 2 days earlier. It wasn't much. Peeling paint, broken steps, a porch light that blinked like it was unsure whether to die or fight. But it was mine. After 10 years of being everyone's emotional mule, I finally did something for myself. With every scraped-up dollar I'd saved from managing wedding events and weekend catering, I bought that rotting box of Independence for $1,400. I thought they'd at least fake support, pretend to be happy, but all I got was mockery. My dad said I'd shamed the family legacy. My mom muttered something about how selfish decisions always come back around. My sister, she laughed. Well, I hope you like mold. That was the day they told me to leave. Not with a shout. That would have been too easy. No, they used polite poison. This just isn't your place anymore, Dad said, sipping his bourbon. You've made your choice, Mom added. Good luck with the rats, my sister winked. I packed in 20 minutes. I didn't even take the photos on the wall. I left behind the bed I grew up in, the books I used to write stories in, and the necklace Mom gave me on my 13th birthday, the one she later pretended never existed. The first night in the house, the wind howled through the cracked windows. I lay on the hardwood floor with a rolled-up sweater for a pillow. Cold. Alone. But something in me, it was alive again. I had nothing, and still, I felt warmer than I ever had under their roof. The next morning, I opened every window, scrubbed the counters until they shone, tore down the molded curtains and hung up the cheap ones I found at the thrift store. There was no furniture yet, but there was light and freedom. I didn't cry, not until I got a text from my mom that said, "Your sister is hurt. She's crying. She needed that money, Reagan." Followed by, "I hope you're proud of what you've done." I didn't respond. I just looked at my hands, scraped, paint-covered, trembling, but steady. Then I turned off my phone and got back to cleaning. I was done explaining myself, done being their lifeline while they drowned me in silence. What they didn't know was, this junk house wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. Day 3 in the house, and I was still sleeping on the floor. My back ached, my wrists were sore from scrubbing, and the water heater made a sound like it was choking on its own regret. But every bruise and every crack in the wall reminded me, I chose this, not them. Me. On the 4th morning, I found a cardboard box on my doorstep. No note, no return address. Inside were 6 used forks, a single bath towel, and a half-broken lamp. From the handwriting on the side, I knew it was my mom. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so them. My generosity speaks volumes, she probably said while sealing the box. I donated it all the same day. The house was slowly becoming a home. A neighbor, Miss Tina, knocked one evening holding a plate of peach cobbler and said, "I saw your light on. Thought you might be hungry." I almost cried, not because of the cobbler, which was heaven, but because it had been years since anyone had offered me something without expecting a return. That night, I slept a little warmer. Then, a week in, I got a message from my cousin Sarah. "Hey, just FYI, your sister's telling everyone you ran off with the money she needed for her spiritual reset. She said you've always been jealous." Jealous? Jealous of what? Her perfectly curated social media, her therapist-approved tantrums, her ability to make our parents orbit her pain like it was sacred. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted one photo, the front porch, newly painted sky blue, with the caption, "Peace isn't perfect, but it's mine." Within minutes, my sister commented, "Wow, I guess we all cope in different ways." And then my mom messaged me, not asking how I was, not asking if I needed anything. Just this: "Please don't embarrass the family online." That was the moment it clicked. They didn't care about me. They cared about control, about image, about the optics of a daughter who dared to say no, who didn't bend, even when banished. I didn't delete the post. Instead, I made the porch even brighter the next day. I added yellow potted plants. I painted the doorframe white. I hung a chime that rang like laughter every time the wind visited. People in the neighborhood began waving. One lady offered to sell me her old couch for $10. Another guy helped me patch a leaky pipe without charging me a dime. It wasn't much, but it was community. It was something I never had, even in that big family house with pristine windows and cold hearts. But peace never sits for long when chaos wants company. 2 weeks in, I heard a knock at the door. It was my dad, wearing golf shorts, holding a coffee he clearly didn't buy for me. He glanced around, sniffed, then said, "You're actually making it work." I just stared at him. Then he leaned in and said, "Your sister's struggling. Your mom's worried sick. Maybe it's time you come home. Be reasonable." Reasonable. Was it reasonable when they threw me out like yesterday's mail? Was it reasonable to shame me for not funding a vacation while I fought for survival? I looked at him, long and still. Then I said quietly, "I am home," and shut the door. He didn't knock again. But that was just the beginning of their unraveling. Because soon, they'd need more than just forgiveness. They'd need me. A week after I shut the door on my dad, the silence from my family turned into noise. Loud noise. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Carla. "Reagan, your sister is not doing well. She's had a meltdown at the spa. Screamed at a yoga instructor. There's a whole TikTok about it." I let her talk. "She keeps telling people she's been abandoned. That you took her retreat money and ran off to play house in some slum." Then the dagger. "You should apologize. Be the bigger person." I almost laughed. Be the bigger person. Again. Where was this energy when I was being told to get out of the family home like I was a stranger in my own bloodline? I said nothing. Just hung up. Later that night, my neighbor Miss Tina invited me over for iced tea on her porch. Her husband was trimming hedges while a Motown song played softly from the open window. "You're building something real here," she said, watching me sip. "I'm trying." She nodded toward my house across the street. "It's not much yet, but there's love in it. I can feel it, and you didn't wait for permission to start." That stayed with me. Back at home, I hung a framed quote over the living room wall. Found it at a thrift store for $3. "Bloom where you're planted." That night, I received a message from my sister. "I hope you're proud. I'm miserable and it's your fault. Everyone's turning on me. Even Mom is stressed beyond belief. But I guess you got what you wanted, attention." Then she posted a story online, her crying in a candlelit room, talking about betrayal and losing trust in family. The comments were brutal. Who makes their sibling pay for their healing? Wait, she kicked her sister out over that. Maybe the trash house is where the real peace lives. Suddenly, her narrative was collapsing. My inbox flooded. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years were saying things like, "Just saw your sister's drama. Wow, you okay? You handled that with grace. You were always the strong one." Even my ex messaged, "I was an idiot for not seeing your worth, but now the whole world does." I ignored him. I was past begging for people to see me. Now they were just watching me rise. The final straw came 2 days later, when my dad called again. This time, he sounded different. Tired. Not angry. Just tired. "Reagan, your mom is not well. She hasn't been sleeping. Your sister's spiraling. And honestly, we're not holding things together. The family's unraveling." Silence. Then, maybe we were wrong. Maybe you were just trying to find something of your own. If there's anything you can do to help. It was the shift, the first crack in their pride. I looked around at my humble little living room, the second-hand couch, the chipped mug of tea, the paint-streaked walls. It wasn't much, but it was built with my hands. Not guilt, not control, not obligation. I held the phone for a long time. Then I said, I can't help you until you admit what you did. All of it. He didn't respond, but I could hear the breath catch in his throat. Because deep down, he knew I wasn't just building a house. I was building a line they couldn't cross anymore. 3 days passed after my father's call. 3 days of quiet. 3 days where I painted the bedroom walls soft sage green, pulled weeds from the backyard like they owed me an apology, and learned to sleep soundly again. Not because the world was calm, but because I was. Then came the knock. Not a gentle knock. A nervous, rapid one. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. Just entry. I opened the door, and there she stood. My sister. In designer sunglasses and a cream shawl that looked like it cost more than my plumbing system. She had mascara trails down her cheeks, like she was performing sadness for an invisible audience. I leaned against the doorframe. She didn't even say hello. Just burst out. Everyone's turned on me. I can't post anything without getting attacked. You ruined everything. I blinked. I ruined everything. I opened the door wider, but only by an inch. Funny, I said. I thought you did that all by yourself. She stepped forward, and for the first time in her life, didn't look entirely sure of herself. Her voice cracked. I don't even care about the money anymore, okay? But they are falling apart. Mom cries every night. Dad just stays at the TV. I'm just trying to hold things together. I almost felt something. But then I remembered her at that table, sipping tea while I was banished. I remembered her laughing when I told them I bought the house. I remembered her silence. And silence is a choice. I'm not your glue, I told her softly. You shattered your mirror. Don't ask me to pick up the pieces. She scoffed, like she still believed she could flip the narrative. You're being dramatic. And there it was. That old song. Dramatic. I repeated, stepping onto the porch now. Let me get this straight. You convinced the whole family I betrayed you. Had me kicked out of the only home I knew. Spread lies. Turned people against me. And when I finally found peace, you come crying because the truth came out, and I'm the dramatic one. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I pointed down the steps. You should go. Then I paused, looked her in the eyes. And if you ever post about me again, if you so much as hint that I'm the villain, I will go live and tell the internet everything. And unlike you, I don't need filters to be believed. She stepped back, and that's when it hit her. She had no control here. Not in my house. Not in my life. And not in the eyes of people who had already seen who she really was. She left without another word. I closed the door, slid the lock, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. My house was quiet again. My life was mine again. But something told me they weren't done yet. Because when people like them lose control, they either apologize or they escalate. The next escalation came wrapped in paper. A formal envelope slid through my mailbox like a snake in silk. At first, I thought it was another guilt note, maybe some carefully worded apology from my mom, pretending she just wanted peace. But the return address made my stomach clench. It was from their lawyer. I opened it slowly, my fingers ice cold. Inside was a letter, 3 pages long, typed in emotionless Times New Roman. They were suing me, not over money, over defamation. Apparently, my potch photos, my cryptic quotes about healing, even the chime in the background of my videos, were targeted attacks meant to damage the family's reputation. I read it twice, then again. Then I laughed. Laughed so hard I cried. Not because I was scared. No, I'd already lost everything once. But because this was their next move. Lawsuits. Over healing. I called their bluff the next morning. I showed up, uninvited, to their pristine home. The one with the white pillars and the black gate and the soulless silence. My mother opened the door. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed like a wall of denial. You really think you can scare me with paperwork? I asked calmly. She said nothing. I took a deep breath. You threw me out like garbage. For buying a home, my home, with my money. Because I didn't want to fund her spa vacation and pretend it was healing. You mocked me, humiliated me. Then you tried to ruin me. And now that the world sees it, you want to play victim. My dad muttered. We were trying to protect the family image. I laughed again, bitter this time. Image? You care more about what strangers think than what your daughter feels. My mom finally spoke, voice trembling. You're right. Okay, you're right. But we didn't think it would go this far. People have stopped calling. Our business is suffering. Your aunt won't even speak to me. I stepped forward. Then maybe next time, you don't treat loyalty like a weapon. Maybe next time, you don't turn on the one person who never asked for more than respect. They looked small, tired, cracked. Good. I wasn't there to destroy them. I wasn't there to forgive them, either. I was there to make one thing crystal clear. You have no say in my life anymore. No voice, no power, no right to rewrite my truth. I turned to leave, but then paused. Oh, and dropped the lawsuit. Or I'll file one back. For emotional damages, slander, and public humiliation. And unlike you, I have receipts. Their mouths fell open, and I walked out, head high, heart steady. By the time I reached my front gate, I already had a text from their lawyer. Matter withdrawn. No further action will be pursued. Power doesn't come from yelling. It comes from surviving and still choosing peace over performance. But I wasn't done yet. Not until they felt what it was like to be on the outside looking in. The lawsuit was dead, but the story wasn't. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming something they never expected. Seen. I started posting renovation videos of my junk house. Not flashy stuff, just real moments. Me patching holes, painting walls, laughing when I spilled white paint on my face. No sob story, just the truth, one frame at a time. The internet noticed. Then it exploded. A local news station picked it up. Woman buys $1,400 junk house after being kicked out and turns it into a home. They interviewed me standing in front of my yellow porch swing with chipped paint. I told them, this house saved me. It gave me something my family never did, the space to be myself. The video hit 1 million views in 3 days. And the comments, you're the kind of woman I want my daughter to look up to. This is what resilience looks like. $1, 400 well spent. You bought peace. But it wasn't just online. Local businesses began offering help. A retired carpenter showed up with a toolbox. A small furniture shop gifted me a coffee table. Someone left potted plants on my porch with a handwritten note. Grow where they tried to bury you. It was surreal. And the cherry on top? A letter from the Community Preservation Society. They nominated my house for a neighborhood revival feature. Apparently, what I was doing, taking something discarded and making it beautiful, was inspiring. I posted the letter online. That's when the text started again. From my mother. We saw the article. Can we talk? We didn't know it would turn into this. Your dad feels terrible. I ignored them. Until one night, I got a DM from my old high school teacher. He wrote, your parents came by the school this week, asking if we'd consider removing your name from the alumni board. My breath caught. They said the attention you're getting is hurting their family's image. It was again, image. They couldn't stop me, so they tried to erase me. I didn't reply, not to the DM, not to my parents. Instead, I posted a photo. Me standing in my living room. Walls painted bright. New curtains. That thrift quote framed behind me. Bloom where you're planted. Caption. They tried to uninvite me from the family, so I built my own. That post hit 3 million views in 24 hours. My face was now on every overcoming reel, every Pinterest board about healing, every empowerment blog. But I wasn't doing it for fame. I was doing it to reclaim my name. And for the first time, I didn't care if they were watching. Because when your peace becomes louder than their pride, they either shrink or they show up. And the next knock on my door wasn't from my parents. It was from someone I hadn't seen in years. And he didn't come to judge. He came to offer something I never saw coming. I opened the door, expecting another package. Maybe another neighbor dropping off tomatoes from their garden like they'd started doing. But it wasn't that. It was Uncle Ray, my dad's older brother, the black sheep of the family, the one they never mentioned unless they were warning someone not to end up like him. I hadn't seen him in a decade. He looked older, salt and pepper beard, deep lines around his eyes, but his presence was still calm, grounded. He smiled like we were still family. I saw you on the news, he said, holding out a small bag. Figured you could use some tools. And maybe a coffee. I stepped aside and let him in without a word. We sat at my old kitchen table, the one I'd sanded and stained myself. He looked around, impressed but not surprised. I knew you'd build something good, he said. You always had it in you. Your mom and dad just never saw it. I looked at him, cautious. Why are you really here? He sipped his coffee, then leaned forward. Because I know what they are like. And I know how hard it is to walk away when you're still hoping they'll run after you. I didn't answer. He pulled out an envelope. I don't know if this means anything to you, but your grandmother left a fund. It was meant to go to the first grandchild who bought a home, no matter what kind. She wanted it to go to someone who'd build a life. I froze. He pushed the envelope across the table. They didn't tell you about it. They tried to keep it, claimed no one qualified. But I saw your story and thought, maybe this is finally the right time. I opened the envelope with shaky fingers. Inside was a check. $50,000. I felt my chest tighten. My hand shook. My voice cracked. They lied again. He nodded, gently. They've always lied. To keep control. To keep the story about them. I couldn't breathe. Not because I was angry, but because everything was falling into place. My story wasn't a tragedy. It was a setup. Every betrayal, every exile, every insult. They'd unknowingly pushed me into the exact place I was meant to be. Not just a house, a home. And now, I had the means to make it something bigger. Uncle Ray stood to leave. He paused at the door. One more thing, he said. You've got a voice now. People are listening. Whatever you do with that, make it count. Then he was gone. I stood there, check in hand, staring at the floorboards I once cried over, the broken window I once taped shut, the sink I fixed with YouTube tutorials and too much elbow grease. And I realized, this wasn't revenge. This was redemption. And it wasn't over yet. Because the final act wasn't about what they did to me. It was about what I would build, in spite of them. The house didn't just change. It transformed. With the $50,000 inheritance, I didn't rush to add granite countertops or new SUV. No, I built a community center right next to my little house. A place for the outcasts, the black sheep, the ones who got labeled too much or not enough. The kids whose families told them they were a burden, not a blessing. We called it the welcome room. We held free classes, plumbing, job skills, journaling. We had therapy circles. We cooked together. We cried together. We healed. And one day, I stood on a small wooden stage in front of 60 people. Some I'd known, some I hadn't, but every single one of them had felt the sting of rejection. I spoke from the same mouth they tried to silence. I told them. They said I bought trash, but I turned it into a doorway, and the people they threw away They walk through it every single day. The crowd stood. Tears. Applause. A standing ovation, not for me. For the idea that love can grow where cruelty tried to root. And then, 2 weeks later, it happened. My parents showed up. I saw their car pull into the gravel drive. Same pristine silver SUV. Same pearl-white smiles hiding shaking hands. I met them at the gate. Mom opened her mouth. But I spoke first. No press allowed today. And no tours. This isn't your redemption arc. Dad cleared his throat. We just wanted to see it. That's all. I looked them both in the eyes. See what? The life you told me I'd never build. Silence. Then Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. Can we come in? Just for a minute. I didn't blink. No. She looked like I'd slapped her. Dad scoffed. You're really going to shut us out? I leaned on the gate. You built the door. I just learned how to close it. They didn't argue. They walked away. And this time, I watched them leave. I turned back to the welcome room, where kids were laughing, painting, growing. Where healing wasn't sold, it was shared. And I whispered to the sky, you were right, Grandma. A house doesn't make a family, but love does. I didn't just survive. I thrived. And I never had to scream to be heard again. Because when you build something real, even silence becomes a legacy.